going on, family? You have just stepped into So Bloom, place where growth gets real, healing isn't linear, and emotional intelligence takes center stage. I am Mario Reyes, and as always, I'm here with the squad. Mr. Sid Jackson, Mr. Jamel Shelton, Dr. Curtis Jasper, and today's esteemed guest, Mr. Alfred Shivy Brooks. What up?
We're here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, today's conversation is going to be about transparency.
Yep.
And I'm going to start every single episode the same way I start off anything when I'm building with my brothers is, Shiv, how are you feeling?
Yeah. Man, intentional, impactful, present.
Man, that's strong. Very.
Yeah. And I say
You
that.
had that shit prepared?
Nah, man, nah. So like, it's one of those things that like, feelings are fleeting. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you ask a person like how you feel, it's kind of like, well, man, you know how we do. You talking to your lady and you might ask her how she feeling, and then 5 minutes later you need to ask her how she feeling because those things, they shift. But I think there are certain, energies that we can have that can always remain constant. Regardless if I'm up or I'm down, I can be intentional. Regardless if I'm up or I'm down, I could be impactful. Like it's certain things, we can control like the effort. We can't control like the result of what the world is necessarily giving us.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
That sound like the words of a point guard.
Man,
You're gonna control the rock.
it's just the words of a man who has had his had life like whip his ass, and realizing that like I'm not really in control, and also at the same time like I don't want to BS anybody and be like, oh yeah, it's great, knowing that in real life you're dealing with the being squeezed as a black man from all angles.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? But knowing that, I'm still on purpose about putting my foot in front of the other, and that I'm still on purpose about trying to, grow or have good experiences or bring joy to the world around me, even in the midst of whatever it is going on.
Tapping into what the topic of today's conversation is about. It's going to be about transparency.
Yep.
And one of the things that I felt like was good to really anchor the conversation is that there's a difference between transparency and honesty. We like to think that they're synonymous. However, honesty could be black and white parameters. Me and Dr. Kurt went to dinner. We certainly did. Transparency is me and Dr. Kurt went to dinner and Dr. Kurt got into a fight because some girl sat at our table. I could be straight honest and say we went to dinner. Yeah. But I would like to be transparent in framing what transpired, right? So what does Transparency mean to you from your perspective?
Courage. Being transparent is not necessarily safe, right? And the black man experience is that, there are no safe spaces for us.
Outside of So Bloom and Ndugu.
Okay.
Therapy is big.
Okay.
We have cultivated
Welcome home,
this.
good brother. Welcome home.
But fair enough that in this space it may be a we listen, we don't judge energy, right? But that comment section going to do what the comment section does when these clips come out.
That's a fact.
Right? So like we still got to be honest about the fact that like at the end of the day the black male experience is one that lacks grace.
That's a good point.
Well, to that point, because I am such a student, I have statistics. Y'all want to hear my statistics?
Okay.
A 2023 study found that black men are less likely to share feelings about personal struggles due to fear of judgment and or being perceived as weak. That's from the American Journal of Society. 60% of black men say that they prefer to handle personal challenges privately, even when support systems are available. I know for a fact we could all attest that we've seen this happen firsthand.
Yep.
And the last is transparency in relationships has been shown to improve trust and mental well-being. But black men report needing the safe spaces that we provide.
Absolutely.
To feel comfortable being fully honest. One of the things that I say about our own Dougal sessions is that sometimes a lion needs to roar without somebody asking what's wrong. I can't roar at my house. It'll disrupt the peace. Wife will be uneasy. The kids will get scared. But if I say it exactly as it comes in my brain in one of our sessions,
You're not frowned upon.
it's not friend. They're like, you got it out?
Yeah.
And now let's process that. And then by the time I go home, I could give a well thought out and felt out
Yep.
explanation.
Yep.
So when you think about transparency and the vulnerability it allows, do either of y'all have like a testimony to when you've shared and you felt like, damn, somebody's gonna weaponize this against me?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, that's almost like every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even with me being my full self, living in my full self, and if I'm being honest, living by the adage of fuck what people think, it's still a level of fear of not feeling safe. I think with this whole transparency thing, a big factor for me is more of, let's say, the social emotional factors that come to play in it. Pretty much piggybacking off of what you were saying, I find myself omitting a lot of things unintentionally, but that's the difference between transparency and honesty. I think honesty is telling the truth when you're asked, but transparency is telling the truth even when you're not asked, using your analogy to the T. But even when we were joking, right, I found myself omitting things without even realizing it, because it's such a natural thing to still tell the truth, be honest, have dialogue, but I still need to make sure I feel safe. And learning that in the group, and finally finding a place to where I'm not judged for literally just telling my truth. I'm still working on and learning and working through that in therapy. Because even just a quick story about my experience with therapy, it took me to see 7 different licensed clinicians for me to get it. And the issue I found myself doing was lying to her.
I was about to say, was that them or was that you?
It was a me thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I found myself lying. I found myself creating stories to where I wasn't the villain or I wasn't the person being hurt, when in actuality, I'm just telling my story from a third person's point of view. And then I started to realize that it wasn't necessarily that this person wasn't able to help me. I needed someone who wasn't trying to give relatable stories, someone who wasn't trying to match trauma with trauma. I actually needed someone who understood, who was first culturally competent, understood the emotional damage of which I was coming from, but most importantly, someone who understood childhood trauma. That's what helped me start to realize what transparency looks like, and it actually started in therapy, first by being honest with myself, then my therapist.
Do you go to therapy, Chef?
Yeah, so what's interesting, I actually used to work for the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities for like 6 years before I was a teacher. And what I used to do is travel around the state of Georgia, and I would go to all the different mental health hospitals and what they call community service boards, like Mercy Care, places where like people can get, day services, if you will. And I coach people how to articulate their lived experience with mental illness and with recovery, and then give them opportunities to speak in front of state agencies and nursing schools and clinicians and things like that to, help dispel a lot of the what's the word I'm looking for? Stereotypes.
Tropes.
The tropes around mental health, mental illness, and recovery. And so, as I started doing that work, I started going to therapy, and my situation is very similar to yours. Like I had one therapist for maybe like 3 years, and then I kind of bounced around to a couple, and then like, honestly, like I took a big step back from therapy.
Why was that?
Yeah, so I felt a couple different ways about it. I think this one kind of goes more to like fit. There will be often times where I'll share a story with the therapist about things that are going on, and it's just tea for them. It's just tea. Like it didn't feel like I was there to get feedback or advice or counsel, if you will. It kind of felt like, I don't know, like I was just
Another
storytelling. Yeah, and I found something interesting. And listen, I don't hate on therapy at all, but I would say, man, we probably need less therapists if we had better friends.
I mean, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Honestly, and so what I will say is, like, through my platform, doing Teacher Talk Live and talking with
I
teachers.
definitely dropped the ball. I was supposed to give you like an amazing, give them the whole bio.
Ain't gotta do all that.
Educator.
We're going to weave it in. We're going
Hold on.
We gonna weave it in.
I'm gonna
you
take
know.
it back. I'm gonna take it back. Not just the poet, the winner of Freestyle Friday on 106 in Park.
Yeah.
This is real talk.
This is
We
real
taking it
talk.
back.
Wow, remember
Taking it
that?
back.
Yeah.
Freestyle Friday.
And now board member on the
Atlanta Public School Board.
Atlanta Public School Board.
That's
Yeah, elected official.
Do you understand what we're talking about here? To see somebody go from being a battle rapper to an elected public official? It's a range and experience.
And you're still a classroom teacher.
And still a classroom.
And in the
teacher.
classroom.
Still classroom
Still in the
teacher.
classroom. Still in the
Good,
classroom.
And amazing advocacy work.
Thank you.
My brother
It's good, man.
gets
Love that.
the point conveyed online
Yep.
at every single turn for everything that matters to our people.
Thank you.
When they say no, thank you.
Yeah.
Say you're welcome.
Nah, man. Nah, thank you, because the reality is, right, like, it's a lot of people who share their opinions on how they feel about things, but not a lot of people are listened to, right? And so what I know is, like, I have the ability that, like, I could press a couple buttons on this device in my pocket and reach millions of people by the end of the day. That's a privilege, right? And it's also an honor, but moreover, it's a responsibility.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's one of the things that I had to really come to terms with, and realizing, like, yo, you got a responsibility to be transparent and be authentic, and sometimes talk about or show things that are not fun or great, right? Like the world, 2 years ago, watching me experience losing my 16-year-old son in
My condolences.
in a very public way. You know what I'm saying? Like, where there was no hiding from it. It's all over the news. It's all over the blogs. It's everywhere. Now, granted, the blessing in it all is that my son died with dignity, right? My son died, a person looked at as a hero, right? There's a benefit in that a lot of parents who have to go through this unfortunate experience don't get, right? But in sharing what it's like to be in those moments with people, because it's hard to be what we don't see. And truth be told, we don't often see people in their most vulnerable spaces and see them navigating these things, or see how to turn, your pain or your trauma into promise or opportunity or purpose. And so, that's like what having this platform, that's what it has looked like for me. Like, I never would have imagined that I'd be a person in the grief community that people would look at as like, this is an example of how to navigate grief.
May I ask you, how did, from a personal standpoint, right? I have a 15-year-old son. I know the relationship between a father and son.
Yeah.
How did you, when the cameras went off, right? When you put that phone back in your pocket, how did you personally deal with some of those feelings and emotions of the grief of losing your son, brother?
Bro, I think I'm still trying to figure that out, if I'm being honest with you. I'm
sure.
Right? Like, truth be told, going through a loss like that is one thing. I think also the other caveat is that I had lost a very close friend of mine as well, who went in the water to try to save my son, who gave his life trying to save my son, right? So not only did I lose my son, but then I also lost a close friend, right?
Someone that you could potentially talk to if you were going through that situation.
Same incident?
Same incident, in the same moment. Charles Johnson, the third. Yeah, Chuck. Everybody know him as Chuck, right? And so that's your frat, right? So yeah.
Yeah, that's wow.
Yeah, so it's Atlanta, man. Like, everybody connected, right? But going through that, I had to navigate, like, how do you go through feeling what you feel, but then also you still got to support because you're still a husband.
Yeah.
And then you also got to support because you're still a dad to another one, right? And then two, like, you're a pillar in the community, so like you still got to deal with people crying on you, right? Like, there was like a 5-6 month period I could not walk out of my house anywhere and not have people say, my condolences, I'm so sorry. I could be living in full joy for that day, in a good place, and then I got to get anchored by my
That
truth.
force that emotion back.
Yeah.
That's part of this, like, forced transparency you had to deal with. Like, this is a pain you live with every day, and although their intentions may be good,
It's also reliving the experience.
they're visiting what you're living through daily.
They're visiting
and they get to
what you're
leave
living through daily. Wow.
when they're when they're ready.
No, that's facts.
And now they just change your entire trajectory for the day and mood.
Bro, it's like I'll have people come to me and say, literally. So this lady messaged me, and she said, brother, listen, all due respect, man, I had to unfollow you because every time I saw your post, it pulled me emotionally, right? And I have to sit with, dang, I wish I had that privilege. I wish I had that privilege.
Yeah. To just turn it off or
to
unfollow.
turn it off, to unfollow the story. You know what I'm saying?
That's good, bro.
And so, you know, and so I take that as like a challenge to all of us, that when we see people in a furnace, to realize the privilege that you have in it, and how you show up or you don't, and how you engage with that person in the midst of whatever it is that they're going through. Like, I've learned, like, a lot of times people are like, man, I don't know the right thing to say. I don't know the right thing to say. And I've actually learned that, like, being still is probably the best thing that you can do, right? If you think about it, like, a lot of times people will go through something with a close friend or fall out with a close friend, and the first thing they'll say is, you weren't there for me. You weren't there for me. Nobody says, you didn't say the right thing. You didn't resource me in this way. You didn't. No, it's, I just wanted you to be still with me.
Hold the space.
Yeah.
Just hold space, just be still, right? And so how did I navigate this stuff, man? It was starting a foundation in honor of my son to ensure that, we're working on aquatic safety and making sure that more black children are able to swim when 80% of black children can't swim.
What's the name of this program?
It's the Bryce Brooks Foundation.
The Bryce
right?
Brooks.
Bryce Brooks Foundation in honor of my son. And two quick backstory, both my wife and I were lifeguards from like high school into our adulthood, right? Wow. So like,
that adds I would know that. And only imagine that adds a whole nother layer.
For sure, right? Because one of the kids who was in the water with my son, who was one of his friends, they were on a trip together, right, was a kid I taught how to swim, who made it home. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's one of those things that, like,
it's a what if that's gonna constantly play.
But let me tell you, man, the best lesson that I learned in dealing with this, brother, is never allow yourself to fall in the trap of what if or why. Most of us, our life goes to a standstill because we stay stuck at what if and why. And when I think about it, when I look at it, knowing that, my brother Chuck Johnson lost his life, I say to myself, man, it could have been me and him.
Wow.
What if that? Right? So, like, it's this, you never want to find yourself stuck there. That is such a trapping. And in fact, I would say it's spiritually immature.
That's a good point.
To believe that it's ours to change.
Yeah. Were there moments that you fell in that trap? And if so, how were you able to get out of that?
I was intentional from moment one to not fall in that trap.
Wow.
From moment one. I remember standing in the driveway with my wife, and when we first, whole story of driving down to Florida and then driving back, and even what that's like, 5-hour drive with that on you. Yeah, it hurt. Crazy, right? But I remember us sitting in that driveway and her being, why did this happen? And what if I was there? What if we were there? Why? And I had to be firm with her in that moment. And it probably didn't feel good to her. But it was definitely one of those times that as a man, I felt like it was called upon me to lead our family to never fall into that trap.
So, I think you
love
said
that
something
about you, bro.
earlier that just resonated with me. He said less people would need therapy if you had better friends.
Yeah.
After such a traumatic experience, when you leaned into the tribe, I'm sure Charles Johnson's wife, I'm sure y'all were close prior to.
Right.
But now this is unbreakable bonds.
Yeah.
Leaning into your tribe. So can you explain how your tribe showed up for you in the way in which they allowed you to be vulnerable and transparent, absent of shame?
Yeah, it would have been impossible without. Like, in the very moment, it was interesting because in the moment that that I got the phone call that they couldn't find Bryce in the water for 20 minutes. Like they were like, yo, 20 minutes we've been looking for him. So you get that call.
Right. Yeah.
Mind you, I was a lifeguard. I'm already knowing if you're submerged for 4 minutes or more, guaranteed brain dead.
Right.
Even if we save you, what's there to be hopeful for, right? Yeah. So in that moment, I was kind of already like, this ain't gonna be good, right? But I just so happened to be sitting at my kitchen table with all my closest friends, Mina Tarabi and Kimberly Latrice Jones and Scotty Smart and my boy Cord Parks. And all of us are sitting in my house trying to decide when we were going to announce that I was running for school board.
Oh, wow.
When you got the call.
When I got the call.
You got the call.
When I got the call.
Are you serious?
And so in that moment, my people like, yo, pack your bags, helping us pack bags, helping us get into the car, and they holding down the house. We ain't had to worry about Christian. We didn't have to worry about the dogs. We didn't have to worry about, it was like, yo, we got you covered, right? And so, and in navigating all of this, man, it was the trial. Like, I had some of the deepest boo-hoo moments crying on my boy. Y'all know Parlay from the Franchise Boys. Parlay and his wife was over my house, and I'm just, whoo, letting it all out, right? And so it was those real friendships and real people and just being present. Nobody tried to have the right thing to say. Mm-hmm. No one tried to have the right thing to say. And in fact, I think like I probably fell into a world of like prophesizing and into a world of different clarity, into a world of having a completely different understanding. I actually feel like I graduated in that moment. Like I was born new. I was baptized in fire through it.
I just got to say, bro, I'm sorry I'm tearing up.
Yeah, man.
But I don't know if you remember how we met, right? But I've randomly volunteered because you was a black man doing something I'd never seen before, and I didn't even know you. Our connection was through a young lady, Shayna Barley.
Yep.
You came to her house, and I even opened the door, and I shook your hand.
That's
I
right.
remember that, right?
That's right.
And then I intentionally went up the block. I didn't even ask people put in your joint. But
Yes.
what's crazy is hearing your story through a third-party lens, social media, and media, and finally being in a position to literally just hear it from the horse's mouth, bro. It's resonating, man. Didn't lose a child in that kind of manner, but almost, I talked to Dr. Kurt about some of my experience with my child now, feeling like I lost my child that's still living. Through small experiences, but bro, man, I'm just grateful for you, the work you're doing in that community, how you're showing up as a black man, but also why I'm crying is listening to how you're showing up for yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't say I don't know, but in this moment, I don't know if I would have that strength if I lost a kid. That's your heart, bro.
It's a choice.
I know.
It's a choice. Like often I ask, and I talk to my students about this, like, yo, is being resilient a choice or a trait? And the facts of the matter is, like, you make a choice.
Yeah.
Constantly, but you're constantly making that choice, right?
It's just like loving somebody. You got to make a choice to do that every day.
Yeah.
That's real.
Like, we make a lot of choices every day. If smoking is your thing, you make a choice to do it every day. If drinking and clubbing is your thing, you make a choice to do it every day.
Right.
If loving on people is what you do, you make a choice to do it every single day. So if being healthy, being healed, being on purpose, being intentional is what you want to do, you make a choice to do it every day because you could do nothing.
Yeah. And the reality is, I hear you sound so stoic right now, but you also gave the testimony to having that best cry of your life.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that I always say about friends, we always want the friend that could laugh with us.
Right.
That friend that cries with you, though,
Amen.
when you share a good cry with somebody,
Amen.
oh, that's a different level of exchange. That's the intimate.
That's the intimacy we talked
That's
about
the
in the
intimacy we
previous
talked about, yeah.
Word.
episode, right?
Yeah.
And
Man.
Oh, growing up as a kid, you couldn't tell me I was going to be crying on my porch with a franchise boy.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just trying to bang him a white tee. I never would have imagined.
Right.
That's my bro I'm calling
Exactly.
when the shit hit the fan.
I
I
feel this on my heart, and I just have to say this. And me and Shivy know each other through our poetry, and I'm always what's his name? What's my man's name from In Living Color? I got a song, you want to hear it? Here it goes. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I think I remember. Come on, you taking us back.
Yeah.
It's the 90s.
But
You saying that like you.
there's a line that I wrote for my sister that I lost that says, "Love isn't definite. There isn't even definite. Love is an energy. It's our flesh that is delicate." Just wanted to leave that with you because that boy is living
Yep.
not just in you, in the work you're doing, in the relationships you've created. That energy is still here, and as long as you keep that bottle shaking up, you know that when it's your time to go up, now y'all get the merge energies.
That's the I think actually that is the tough part of grief that I think often people can't articulate, is that there's this expectation for love to offer to a person you can't give it to.
That's good, bro.
Wow, that's good.
And then what do you do with it? So it's built up energy, no place to put it.
Right. That's grief.
Transference.
Facts. And
great.
so often it comes out in some of the worst ways.
Exactly.
Right.
for a lot of us, right? And I'm not saying that I always do it all the best ways, right? I think like in this time, like in some of the ways I don't handle it well, is like becoming more reclusive or being to self, not picking up the phone.
The isolation.
And isolating.
Yeah.
Isolating. You know, I kind of, for me, I see it as like just kind of measuring the output.
But you don't owe anybody either.
That's fair, but to be honest, yes, that's true. But the experience of being a man never feels like you don't have the requirement to give,
That's a good one.
because we are assessed and valued based upon our
Our
output.
ability to do.
Absolutely.
Instead of just being.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's
So then the being makes you feel like like if you're just still, can eventually and like they'll give you grace for a little bit.
Yeah. But like how much longer, brother?
Yeah.
Like,
But that's about it. Yeah.
Oh, bro, it's about to come up on 2 years now. You've been dealing with this. How
even
still
if they're
you gonna be
not,
still?
even if that's not really their perception, maybe it's our own internal
Amen.
perception of like,
Amen.
damn, like
Amen.
I should be doing more right now
Yes.
instead of just being present with myself and these emotions that I'm going through.
Yes, but if you've created a world where, especially if you're high output, especially if you're high output, right? It's felt when you're not.
Indeed.
Damn, you ain't posted in a month.
I
What's
get
going
that.
on?
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, it happens. Like, there becomes this expectation to maintain that high level, and when you take them lumps, it's hard to do.
And this is specifically why I asked you, how are you feeling versus how are you doing?
I don't even think we got to another question.
How are you?
We still on the first
really how it
Yeah, I'm thinking about
whole
it.
show.
And it don't matter. 'Cause that's the one that matters the most.
Exactly.
Amen.
See, how you doing is always based on productivity.
Yeah.
How are you doing? Yeah, I'm doing a lot. I'm doing a little. Doing mediocre. How are you feeling? I want to know. We want to know. How is whatever it is that you're going through resonating with you in your spirit, in your heart?
Yeah. I would offer a question that could give folks like opportunity to really lean in is what's right.
Elaborate on that.
What's right? What's right with today?
Exactly.
What's right today?
Yeah. What's going
What's right?
What's going right?
Often, because we'll ask people what's wrong.
No, I was like, what's going right in this moment?
What's right?
Because the opposite is what we generally do. What's wrong?
wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
easy
think
to
I've ever
answer.
heard someone ask me what's right.
What's right?
Yeah.
Ask my students that
crazy.
every day when they walk into the class. What's right today?
What age group are you? Or
I teach high school seniors.
high school? Senior?
Oh, that's a wonderful.
Yeah.
thing.
Great
I
group.
teach high school seniors.
But typically, when you ask somebody, what you want, they start off telling you what they don't want. What you want?
Yes,
I tell
yes.
you what I don't want.
Yes. And it's easy to do.
It is.
It's easy to do,
Yeah,
but
it's
like
real.
it's really like, how do we shift ourselves to be rooted in growth mindset?
That's real.
Like, how do we shift it? So even to being intentional about not getting caught up in the whys and the ifs and,
Yeah.
and things like that is
sure.
being intentional about growth mindset.
May I ask you, and this is switching the conversation a bit,
Yeah.
but you're teaching seniors. What is, from your perspective, what does transparency look like from the eyes of someone who's 16 or 17-year-old black man named Tyrone?
Right.
What does that look like for them from your eyes?
for me, just as a teacher, and especially as a black male teacher, it's curating a space where students feel high value for them, and where you build trust. And the best way to do it is transparency. So like the first 2 days of any semester when I have a new group of students, there is no curriculum talk at all. We actually talk about the concept of 4 different things. We talk about the difference between joy and happiness. Mm-hmm. We talk about the difference between purpose and passion. Mm-hmm. And then we talk about the importance of having clarity and the ability to discern between the 4.
That's good.
And so that allows me then to help students see that, happiness is fleeting. It's rooted in the word hap, which means luck. It means it comes and it goes. You smoke a blunt, you get high, whatever, you got to do it again. That's
Love the
happiness,
analogy.
Right. But joy is rooted in achievement and success. Joy is the reason why at a repass, even though it's a sad moment, everyone's still in laughter, right? Because you're talking about the accomplishments and the successes of that person.
So it sounds like happiness is like a state of affairs and joy is a state of being.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Exactly
You done gave me
yeah.
some bars to carry
There you
with
go.
me.
Add
better
to it,
explain
baby.
the kids.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
I was
and
ready
then-
in the
and then-
poem. I cheated.
Yeah. But then too, breaking down like what's the difference between our purpose and our passion? That our passion essentially are just things that serve us. I'm passionate about fashion and shoes and music and food and eating out and experiences or whatever. But our purpose is how we are a value add to other people, and the beauty and purpose is that it could be monetized. And for us, as we navigate life, realizing, what is a moment of happiness versus what is joy? What is something that's just only serving me versus how I am supposed to be serving as a value add to others, and then being able to be clear about it. And so then when I'm navigating that with my students, I'm actually helping them figure out how to decision make. I'm helping them to, when you're thinking about skipping that class, what's that thing that's going to ring in your head to say, man, this is just a moment of happiness, but I'm trying to get to this graduation stage. And so I start learning so much from my students just in that, and then I can teach.
How receptive are they, I would say day one, right? When you're meeting a new group of students and you're opening up with this dialogue, are they very receptive? Because I know oftentimes, I got a teenager, sometimes we don't want to talk about those, especially with an adult, right? So do you find hesitations or resistance when you initially have those conversations with them?
Yeah, I mean, kids are not a monolith, right? And so like their willingness to be open might be different from one to another. Mm-hmm. What I will say as someone who is a parent of a teen and who teaches teens is like it's different. Like even with me teaching swimming, right? Like I know how to teach any kid how to swim, but it's tougher to teach your own kid how to swim. Indeed. Right? So like how your kid is going to be receptive to you might be very different than another adult. Mm-hmm. Moreover, I think when it comes to like the young people, like I'm old enough to be seen like as credible, but young enough to be like, cool. Oh, he kind of cool, right? So like there's a level of like of trust. Like my teacher walked in here with some J's and a bust down chain and a rolling on, like, oh, he cool. We got a Tessie outside.
Why is that?
You're meeting them where they are.
My kids look at me like I'm corny.
Yeah,
All
word
their
up.
friends are like, yo, your dad lit.
I would say only
my
to
sons
you
did it too.
is what they're talking to their friends about, though, right? Like my kids, when we're having those conversations, oh, dad, whatever, but I can overhear conversations when their friends are like, man, your dad is so cool.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. So I think it's a perception of how our kids perceive us in front of our faces.
Well, the perception is because they say it.
Yeah, facts.
They're like,
But they're
"Dad,
not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you that you're lit, though, bro. Like
Yeah, they won't.
they're not going to do
But
that.
they don't
but they
like
will
cynical
flex
fucks.
to their friends about you later.
But they don't
100%.
like when other kids say your dad is popping.
Yeah.
Oh no, he caught. And then now you want to gravitate closer. I love it,
Facts.
but like, come on, seriously.
Facts. No, they talk. My youngest son Christian, man, he the word. He trolls me like nobody's business, bro. Like nobody's business. But let us be, at a conference with 11,000 people in the crowd. Guess who want to be on stage next to Daddy?
Pop. Yeah.
My dad.
I just want to be there. I ain't got no lines. I'm just here, right? And so like your kids are never really going to tell you how lit you are. Man. Like, that's just you got to get over that one. But know that you are him to your kids, and know that like even if they don't necessarily evidence the stuff that you're putting seeds in with them, Like, I had to learn this, like, in my son's passing, and I started hearing about, like, you know, girls coming up and being like, I remember all the rest of y'all were trolling me and acting like this, and Bryce was the only one who would sit next to me and blah, 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 blah. Or when I needed help with this, Bryce was the one to help out. Or when I was going down this path, Bryce was the one to kind of say, let's go this direction instead. You start to realize, like, wow, they might not say things to, like, affirm it for us, but they walking it.
Indeed.
Think about how much your parents have imparted on you and how hard it is to separate who, good or bad. Hard it is to separate yourself from that nurture that they gave you.
That's real.
It's real.
That's real. All right, so boom. So this is a layered show, sir. We're on to the next segment. The next segment is called Brother with Feelings.
Okay.
So whichever one of us was in our bag the most gets to be voted as the brother with feelings.
Okay.
Well,
I
saw a few tears from Sid.
You get to,
do that.
you get, I was gonna say you get
Sid
the
had the
cats
feelings.
You know?
I wipe my eyes before you can see, bro.
Yeah.
That was
Funny,
human,
bro.
brother. That was human.
funny. Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
It just hit home, bro. Like I said,
Are we in agreement that it said though?
Give him that
we
sticker.
gonna-
I think
I'll
so.
take it,
Well,
man.
my
You
brother,
must
here you go.
stick. You
must
Welcome to a new fraternity. Yeah, put that on. You got to put that on. Now, he gets up to 7 minutes to address
Talk that talk.
how he feels as it pertains. And actually, I got a
what's
question
up?
that may be a little poignant. How can transparency be a tool to break the generational curses of silence and resentment that build up as a byproduct of?
Well, great question. I think transparency, just how you call them generational, like generational curses. I think it'll take also generations to break the curses. I think it's going to take generations of transparency so it can become a normal. And it starts with planting the seeds now through your children. Then your children will do it. In my household, I'm trying to plant this seed to the point to where it's natural. I don't care how uncomfortable the conversation is. Like even with the whole, those who know me know I'm pro-gun, right? But I'm from an environment to where you doing at least 5 just for having it, and it's a year per bullet. You know how that goes. But now coming here and it's so loose, but I practice and I preach safety, right? Even down to smoking weed when I smoked weed, you know what I mean? I wasn't hiding it from my daughter, even though it's so taboo. I even told her the medical reasons why I did it. While living in D.C., I actually got a card, and I explained to her, this is what it's for, here's the purpose, even with firearms. But bringing it down to some of the traumas that I've experienced, I've went out of my way to not just share it with my daughter, but even my siblings about my experience with mommy. You know what I mean? Mama got 7 kids, but we have 7 different experiences. And now I add my daughter to the mix because she's the only grandkid on both sides. So she's technically kid 8, right? But from how my mama spoke to us to why I choose not to speak to her a certain way, to how my mother responded with punishment as to why I'm going to choose to talk to you as opposed to get physical with you. Even down to dating, one of the hardest conversations I had to have with my daughter was about boys. But again, she's, I won't say still green, but I'm not going to play stupid like certain shit. But we're not having birds and bees conversation. We're talking about fucking and pregnancy and STDs. There's a lot worse things you could bring home than a baby. But I don't want you to bring none of it home. You know what I mean? But going down to the historical traumas that I've experienced from being stabbed, from being shot, from being in jail, to having mischievous ways, I wanted to plant seeds in my daughter saying, this is my experience. Your mother experience is different. Just because you're being raised in that household and you're developing a personality that I believe matches her mother, there's still a part of some trauma that's embedded in your DNA. And it's showing up like this. Let's talk about it before it gets out of hand. I'm an avid believer in what you don't address at 5 is going to show itself up at 15. And having an 8-year-old little girl who is the only child on both sides who...
Not a little girl.
she's not a little girl no more.
Always gonna be your little girl.
Yeah, you get my point, but she's
Always baby girl.
yeah,
Right.
And she's driven by all of these influences, even down to her decision making right now with college. I pray she goes to Howard for what it can do for her, right? But she wants to go to A&T, which is her choice. But I just want her to make a more informed decision by equipping herself with honesty about what's going to happen when you go here. I'm bringing it down to, what do you want to major in? She finally decided, and based off her experiences, to major in project management. I'm trying to teach her, you're going to something called the School of Business with a concentration. This girl's so fixated on homecomings at A&T.
Right.
But then, okay, now
Our homecomings is lit though.
I'm trying to tell her the same goddamn thing, you know what I'm saying? And not only that, just being so close in proximity, right? Even joining a fraternity or sorority, most people who go to HBCUs in that type of proximity, you're gonna go to A&T's homecoming anyway. You're gonna go to Hampton's homecoming anyway.
Yeah, you are.
You're gonna go to Bowie. You're gonna go to what's the other one up there? But you get where I'm going with that, right?
Xavier
But
College.
even peeling back these layers just to embed a certain level of honest and transparent conversation to where the whole protecting the emotional piece of her, it has to be done. And I felt I kind of handicapped her early on in life by not being real with her about what you're about to experience when you walk out of daddy's door. She's kind of getting it now, and there's certain things to where daddy don't know what he's talking about. The hard part about it all is I'm seeing certain things and attributes in how she's showing up to where it's nothing I can tell her. She has to experience it, no matter how honest I am with her.
See, and again, honesty is the image of a picture, but transparency is the colors that fill that picture in.
Yeah.
And you can only do as much filling in as you can. The reality is that she has to do some
A
of it
learned
herself.
experience through living life.
Yeah, and I guess that's what makes it a little bit challenging and adds a little bit of oomph for me, because we've all, in my personal opinion, all of our kids think they're doing something that we ain't never do before. And I'm literally watching myself, or a human being that looks like me, who's just light-skinned and got hair, make a lot of these decisions, or make these decisions that I know I've made, but know how to correct them. And no matter how many positive examples or principles we instill, it still comes down to, I gotta let her find out. And I struggle with that because I always want to be in this state of protection.
When was the last time you tried to grow your hair out?
Huh? Damn, you coming for me.
That was so wild.
Random. They ain't
where'd
nothing
that
to do
come
with
from, bro?
transparency.
Like, damn.
Well, since
It
we've
takes the
been,
wet and wavy dude
well, since we being transparent, it don't grow on this side. So nah.
Hair transparent.
Yo, I
Yeah,
watched
bro.
I saw this clip from this child development specialist. They were essentially saying that, like, about age 8, 10 is when kids, it's almost like you can't tell them nothing, and everything for them is kind of a refute to something that you're saying. And what I've heard about it is that it is a natural behavior which helps a child push themselves away from the nuclear family, so as to not be ancestral. It was a very interesting
wow.
way to think about it, but like it makes a lot of sense because that is normal among all of our kids. That it's like at a certain age you can't tell
shit.
them nothing.
And we were the
necessarily.
same way. I'll speak for I was the
Yeah.
same way.
Yeah.
I thought I knew it all.
So why
Now-
is it when I tell you the wall is white, you think it's blue until you tell her it's white,
Because
and then it becomes the truth?
yes. But, I mean, but it's I guess just it's nature.
It's just weird.
It's
as
nature.
hell, dog.
It's nature.
true,
And
man.
I think
And some
nature
of
is
these-
weird.
But some of these you may revisit even after when
Off
you get
topic.
married.
Bye,
probably.
bye.
That's
You know what I
just
mean?
Oh yeah, I ain't married. So
That's just not for kids, right?
All right, so Bloom, we got to go on to the next segment. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Nah,
for
no
that,
problem,
Sid.
brother. I'll wear the
The
support
next
problem.
segment is relying on the advice and clinical eye of our OG, Dr. Kurt. So, Dr. Kurt, I got one question.
Yes, sir.
What you try to kick knowledge?
So I would like to, but again, the heaviness of how this segment started off was both uncomfortable and refreshing at the same time. What I will say is, because we ended sort of like in fatherhood and teaching mode when it comes to our children, there's a few things I'd like to keep in mind. Many of you know I started off as a classroom teacher. I was in the classroom in '94. Straight out undergrad, 23. I'm still at the club at night, teaching in the morning, right? You're talking clearly 30 years of being privileged to stand amongst young people and build significance. And so, and what you said, Shivy, right? Learning takes place as a result of significance and not before. And so oftentimes parents don't have the significance that they think. They just hold the position, and that's very uncomfortable for them, depending on their level of maturity or their wound, their healing or their woundedness. And so you think because you hold the position that they are, that you the person, and you are not. Right, and the sooner you can get out of the way and reposition somebody else, is the sooner you can keep your child on track.
Is that
right?
the ego?
It is the ego, right? And so we attach to it. So you find yourself resorting to one position, and that's position of power, which feels to them as force, right? And so to your point, man, whenever I approach a classroom, I'm building significance first, because if I got the significance, then I keep the ears open.
Amen.
And they don't have to give me evidence that they listening to me right now. See, that's the ego. You need evidence that your young folks is listening to you in this moment, right? They may or may not be, right? There's a segment of young people who you have trained to be people pleaser, and they in your face like, yeah, I hear you, and they go crash out. And then there's another
Later
one
on in life,
right? But they learn to hold space for your emotional state, so they got to tell you what you need to hear to keep safe in the home. You just convinced that they listening to you.
Wow.
Until they go this way, and you're like, not my child. Yeah, your child.
Yeah, your child.
And there's the ones, to your point, who are courageous enough to say, I figured out, I hear you, but you ain't me and that ain't my story. So just be cool. Just keep the lights on, bare minimum, and I'll take it from here. But because we all got our own guilt and shame in some area of parenthood, we think that they supposed to make that part comfortable for us, and that is not their job, right? I got students who I taught who are essentially y'all age, right? They're in their 40s with families of their own, and guess what? They hit me on Facebook and say, we heard you.
Yeah, you was right. You was right.
Right? And they didn't push back, right? Because I had the bridge to be comfortable. You know, I was cool, right? So they was like, we'll rock with you. But I'll close with this. My dad told me that. I didn't have the significance, so I didn't hear him, right? Unhealed ears don't hear. I didn't have his significance, so I didn't hear him. But now that he's deceased, and I'm about to be 54 in 8 weeks, man, my pops was so solid, right? I was more of a jerk and an arrogant asshole than my father being a flawful dude. At this age of where I am now. Now, I needed him, and I always lean on this when it comes to fatherhood. You want to really deal healing work with your dad, just hold on to the privilege you got from him. We all got privilege from our dads. If you can find 3 areas of privileges that are game changers for you, it could be good looks, it could be musical talent, it could be height, you got it, right? If you hold on to that, right, just focus on what you got, not what you didn't have. Most men are trying to not be their dads. Not be your dad is you still trying to be him. You not trying to be him done pushed you out of your life. So now you get to over-identify with fatherhood or marriage. Still working on your old identity well into your 40s.
Which is unhealthy as well.
You know how many men I deal with who are hiding out in their own houses, in their own lives? I talk to men every day. They are invisible in their own lives. The only thing they can hold on to is fatherhood, paying the bills. And I'm like, well, what about you, bro? Because here's what I know about my father, right? Here's what I know about my father. And y'all have heard me say this. The best thing, 2 things that my father did. He hung in there with me, and he chose my mother. Period. Right? Like he come with his flaws. He chose the woman to assist him in his healing journey. So while I was focused on what he wasn't, I was like, oh, he introduced me to her. They started. I'm a byproduct of them. Right? He chose well. His choice benefited me. I got my 3 privileges, right, from him, and then I got the fact that he chose my mother and her family. My mother was emotionally mature when I got here. My father, with all his efforts, somehow he pulled that off. That's the gift. He could have dropped it all. That's the gift. He planted his seed in my mother's womb. He planted his seed. My mother ain't immaculately conceived me. My father did this. So whatever issues I got or had with him, I'm like, dude was dope. My bad, I missed it. My bad, I missed it. And I'll say it this, one man couldn't give it to me anyway. But he positioned me around other men. So hold on to the fact that the way you're showing up is in direct correlation to your level of healing. whether you physically buried a child or a father, or whether you haven't inadvertently buried yourself in your own life.
Thank you for that, Dr. Kirk. Yeah, give it up for Dr. Kirk and yourselves. This concludes another episode of I So Bloom. I want to thank you, Shivy.
Sir,
and
yes,
our
sir.
illustrious co-host.
Learned a lot.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you for
Learned
sharing.
That was
Sincerely,
very
brother.
powerful, sir.
Love that. Love
I
that.
hope that other fathers, men, and just the community is able to take the lessons that you gained the hard way and apply it to their life. And you've taught me a lot today too, and I'm gonna sit with this today.
There's a lot of learning that happened all around this room. My hope, if anything that anybody gathers from this conversation that we had, is that ultimately we get a choice in how we perceive things. We get a choice in it. How intentional are you going to be to make sure that that choice is one that's going to be healthy for you in the long run?
Yes, sir.
Powerful, powerful,
Yes, sir.
powerful.
It's good, man.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Love that.
transparency could be a tool or a weapon. I hope you learn how to holster so you no longer try to weaponize anybody's shame. I So Bloom. Peace.
It's good.